Her knees had long since gone numb against the stone floor. Wren held the wine pitcher steady, her arms aching, her head bowed, her eyes fixed on the embroidered hem of Lord Garrick's robes as he lounged in his chair. She'd been kneeling here for over an hour, waiting to refill his cup whenever he deigned to empty it. Her thighs screamed, her back burned, but she didn't move, didn't shift, didn't make a sound. Omegas who made sounds were punished. More wine, creature. Lord Garrick extended his goblet without looking at her. He never looked at her. None of them did. She was furniture to them, useful, silent, beneath notice. Wren rose just enough to pour, then sank back to her knees in the position she'd been trained to hold. Head down, shoulders curved, taking up as little space as possible. This was her life now. It had been her life for 3 years, ever since her village was raided and she was captured along with the other unmated Omegas. The strong ones had been sold to labor camps. The pretty ones had been sold to pleasure houses. And Wren, plain, quiet, forgettable Wren, had been sold to Lord Garrick's household as a serving girl. She'd learned quickly what was expected of her. Silence, obedience, invisibility. The slightest mistake earned a beating. The slightest complaint earned worse. So she'd stopped making mistakes, stopped complaining, stopped being anything at all except a pair of hands that poured wine and a body that knelt when commanded. Tonight was different, though. Tonight, Lord Garrick was hosting the Lycan king. The entire household had been in an uproar for days. Every surface scrubbed, every silver piece polished, every servant threatened within an inch of their lives to be perfect, silent, invisible. Lord Garrick wanted to impress the king, wanted to curry favour, secure alliances, climb higher in the court hierarchy. Wren didn't care about any of that. She cared only about surviving the night without attracting attention. The doors to the great hall swung open. His Majesty, King Theron of the Northern Realm. Wren kept her eyes down as footsteps echoed across the stone floor. Heavy footsteps, confident, the kind of stride that belonged to someone who had never had to make himself small. Your Majesty? Lord Garrick's voice oozed false warmth. What an honour to host you in my humble hall. Please, sit, drink, my finest wine, poured by my most obedient servant. A boot appeared in Wren's field of vision. Fine black leather, polished to a mirror shine. Then another boot. Then the rustle of fabric as someone settled into the chair across from Lord Garrick. Your servant, the king said. His voice was deep, resonant, with an edge that made Wren's skin prickle. The one on her knees. Yes, yes. An Omega, of course. They're best suited for this sort of work. Docile creatures, easily trained. Lord Garrick laughed. This one's been with me 3 years, hasn't spoken a word in 2. Perfect obedience, wouldn't you say? Silence. Wren's heart began to pound. She didn't know why. She couldn't see the king's face, couldn't read his expression. But something in the quality of that silence made every instinct scream at her to run. She pours wine on her knees, the king said. Not a question. Of course. It's the proper position for an Omega servant. Keeps them humble, reminds them of their place. Lord Garrick's tone suggested he was expecting praise. I've found it's the most effective way to, get up. The words cut through the hall like a blade. Wren froze. He couldn't be talking to her. No one talked to her. She was invisible. She was furniture. She was... I said get up. Slowly, trembling, Wren raised her head. The Lycan king was staring directly at her. He was nothing like she'd expected. The stories painted him as ancient and terrible, a monster in human form who had conquered half the realm through blood and fire. But the man before her was not that. He was tall, yes, with broad shoulders and a face carved from hard angles. Silver threaded through his dark hair at the temples. But his eyes, gold, pure molten gold, held none of the cruelty she'd braced herself for. They held fury, but not at her. "Your Majesty," Lord Garrick's voice had gone uncertain, "is something. You keep this woman on her knees." The king's voice was terrifyingly soft. "For hours, from the look of it, to pour wine. It's customary for Omegas to. Not on her knees." The king rose from his chair, and suddenly the room felt smaller. "Not in my presence, not anywhere I rule." Lord Garrick sputtered. "Your Majesty, I meant no offence. She's just an Omega. They're built for this sort of. Built." The word dripped with contempt. "She's built to kneel until her legs give out? Built to be treated as less than human?" The king moved toward Wren, and she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at him with wide, terrified eyes. He stopped directly in front of her. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. "Stand," he said. Quieter now, almost gentle. Wren stared at his hand. Large, calloused, bearing the scars of old battles. A king's hand, reaching down to an Omega kneeling on a stone floor. This was a trick. It had to be a trick. Some new game the powerful played to amuse themselves before delivering the real punishment. "I won't hurt you." His voice softened further. "I promise. But I cannot watch you kneel another moment. Please. Stand." Her body moved before her mind could catch up. Her fingers touched his palm. Warm, so warm. And he pulled her to her feet as easily as if she weighed nothing at all. Her legs buckled immediately. He caught her before she could fall, one arm wrapping around her waist to steady her. She found herself pressed against his chest, breathing in his scent. Pine and smoke and something wild that made her dormant wolf stir for the first time in years. His nostrils flared, his golden eyes widened. For a long moment, neither of them moved. "Your Majesty." Lord Garrick's voice had gone sharp with alarm. "I must insist you release my property. Whatever offence I've given, surely it can be addressed without. Property." The king's voice had changed. Something dangerous lurked beneath the words now, something barely controlled. "You call her property." "She is property. I have the papers. She was legally purchased." "Then I'll purchase her from you." The king hadn't taken his eyes off Wren. His arm was still around her waist, holding her upright, holding her close. "Name your price." "She's not for sale." "Everything in your household is for sale. You've made that abundantly clear." The king finally looked at Lord Garrick, and whatever the lord saw in his face made him go pale. "Name your price, or I'll set one myself. And you won't like my terms." Silence stretched through the hall. Wren could feel her heart pounding against her ribs, could feel the king's warmth seeping into her frozen body. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. 500 gold, Lord Garrick said finally, grudging, furious. "Done." The king looked back at Wren, and something in his hard expression softened. "You're free. You belong to no one now." Free. The word didn't make sense. She'd stopped believing in freedom years ago, stopped believing in anything except survival and silence and getting through one more day. "I don't understand," she whispered. Her voice came out cracked, rusty from disuse. "Why would you? Because you're not property." His thumb brushed across her waist, a gesture so gentle it made her eyes sting. Because no one should kneel until their legs go numb just to pour wine. And because… He stopped. Something flickered in his golden eyes. Surprise, recognition, a hunger he seemed to be fighting to control. Because I think, he said slowly, that I've been looking for you for a very long time. Wren stared up at him, this impossible man who had bought her freedom with a word, who had lifted her from her knees and held her like she mattered. She didn't understand. But as his arm stayed steady around her waist and his golden eyes held hers with something that looked terrifyingly like tenderness, she found herself wanting to. The king's palace was overwhelming. Wren had never seen anything like it. Soaring ceilings painted with scenes of ancient battles, corridors lined with tapestries worth more than her entire village had earned in a year, servants who walked with their heads up, who spoke in normal voices, who didn't flinch when someone approached. She kept waiting for the trick, the trap, the moment when this impossible dream would shatter and reveal the nightmare underneath. It had been 3 hours since Theron had carried her out of Lord Garrick's hall, actually carried her, because her legs had refused to hold her weight after so many hours on her knees. 3 hours since he'd placed her in a carriage lined with furs, pressed a cup of warm wine into her shaking hands, and told her she never had to go back. Now she stood in the centre of a bedroom, larger than the entire servants' quarters she'd shared with a dozen other Omegas. A fire crackled in the hearth. A massive bed dominated one wall, piled with more blankets than she'd ever seen in one place. And through an archway, she glimpsed a bathing chamber with an actual copper tub. The clothes in the wardrobe should fit. Theron's voice came from the doorway. He hadn't entered the room. She noticed that. He'd stopped at the threshold, giving her space. If they don't, the servants will adjust them. Wren turned to face him. The words felt strange in her throat, rusty from years of disuse. Why? Why what? Why any of this? She gestured at the room, the finery, all of it. I'm an Omega, a servant. I'm nobody. You paid 500 gold for me. You could have bought a dozen healthy workers for that price. I didn't want a dozen workers. He leaned against the doorframe, his golden eyes steady on her face. I wanted you. But why? For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he pushed off the frame and took one step into the room, just one, leaving the door open behind him. What do you know about mate bonds? Wren blinked. Mate bonds? The fairy tales? They're not fairy tales. His voice was quiet, certain. They're rare, yes. Most Lycans never find their fated mate. But when we do, when our wolves recognize their other half, there's no mistaking it. Her heart began to pound. What are you saying? When I caught your scent in that hall, when I looked into your eyes, my wolf went silent for the first time in 300 years. He took another step closer. And then he said one word, just one, over and over, until I couldn't hear anything else. What word? Mine. The world tilted. Wren reached for the bedpost to steady herself, her mind refusing to process what he was saying. That's impossible, she whispered. I'm an Omega, a slave. My wolf is so weak I can barely feel her. I can't be your… You are. He closed the distance between them, stopping close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. I know you don't believe it. I know everything you've been through has taught you that you're worthless. But my wolf doesn't lie, Wren, and he has never been more certain of anything. Her eyes burned. You don't even know my name. How can you… Wren. He said it softly, like it was something precious. The servants at Garrick's told me while you were in the carriage. They said you used to sing before you stopped talking, before they broke you. The memory hit her like a blow. She had sung. Back in her village, before the raid, she'd been known for her voice. Her mother used to say she could charm birds from trees. But that was before 3 years of silence and pain and learning to be invisible. I don't sing anymore, she said. I know. His voice was gentle. But you will, when you're ready. When you remember that your voice belongs to you. She didn't know what to say. She'd spent so long being nothing, saying nothing, wanting nothing, feeling nothing, that the sudden flood of emotion was overwhelming. I can't, her voice cracked. I can't do this. I don't know how to be whatever it is you want me to be. I don't know how to be anything except what they made me. Then don't be anything. Theron reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hands. His grip was warm and gentle, so different from the rough hands that had grabbed and shoved and punished her for years. Just rest, just eat, just exist without fear. That's all I'm asking. And in return? Nothing. She shook her head. There's always a price. Not with me. His thumbs traced circles on the backs of her hands. I won't touch you without permission. I won't demand anything you're not ready to give. I won't punish you for speaking or moving or taking up space. His golden eyes held hers. I'm not asking you to be my mate tonight, Wren. I'm asking you to let me prove that not everyone who has power will use it to hurt you. The tears she'd been fighting finally spilled over. She hadn't cried in 3 years. Tears were weakness, and weakness was punished. But here she stood, weeping in front of the Lycan king, and he didn't seem angry or disgusted. He just pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and offered it to her. I'm sorry, she gasped. I'm sorry, I can't. Don't apologize. His voice was firm, but kind. Don't ever apologize for feeling things. You've spent 3 years being told your emotions don't matter. They do. They always did. She took the handkerchief with trembling hands, pressing it to her eyes. It smelled like him. Pine and smoke and something wild. Tell me something, Theron said quietly. Something about yourself. Not about what they did to you. Not about the last 3 years. Something from before. The request startled her. No one had ever asked about before. No one had ever cared who she was underneath the silence and obedience. I used to garden, she heard herself say. My mother had a plot behind our cottage. Herbs, mostly. Lavender and rosemary and mint. I loved the way the dirt felt between my fingers, the way things grew if you gave them enough time and care. We have gardens here. A hint of warmth entered his voice. Acres of them. The head gardener is always complaining he needs more help. Wren looked up at him through tear-blurred eyes. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you options. His lips curved, not quite a smile, but close. You don't have to take any of them, but they're yours if you want them. Options. She'd forgotten what those felt like. I don't understand you, she whispered. You're a king. You could have anything, anyone. Why would you? Because you deserve kindness. He released her hands and stepped back, giving her space again. Because I saw you kneeling on that floor with your legs going numb, and something in me shattered. Because my wolf has been searching for you for 300 years. And now that I've found you, I refuse to let anyone treat you as less than you are. He moved toward the door, then paused at the threshold. There's food on the table by the fire. The bath has been drawn. Sleep as long as you need. No one will wake you. His golden eyes found hers one last time. And Wren? The door locks from the inside. You control who enters. You control everything now. Then he was gone. Wren stood alone in her impossible room, the king's handkerchief still clutched in her hands. She looked at the food, more than she'd been allowed to eat in a week. At the bath, steaming and fragrant with herbs. At the bed, soft and warm and waiting. She didn't trust any of it. But as she sank into the hot water and felt warmth seep into bones that had been cold for 3 years, she found herself hoping anyway. The nightmare dragged her under on the 5th night. She was back at Lord Garrick's estate, kneeling on the cold stone floor. But this time, the wine pitcher was empty, and Lord Garrick was standing over her with fury in his eyes. Worthless creature. Can't even perform the simplest task. His hand came down. She felt the blow before she saw it, the crack of his palm against her cheek, the explosion of pain, the taste of blood in her mouth. Useless. Stupid. Less than nothing. Another blow. Another. She curled in on herself, trying to protect her head, but the hits kept coming. And somewhere in the darkness, she heard herself screaming, "Wren, Wren, wake up. You're safe. You're here with me." Her eyes flew open. Theron knelt beside her bed, his golden eyes bright with concern. Moonlight spilled through the windows, casting silver across his features. He wasn't touching her. His hands hovered in the air near her shoulders, waiting for permission. "You're safe," he repeated. "It was a dream. Just a dream." She was shaking, trembling so hard the bed frame rattled. The nightmare still clung to her, Garrick's voice, Garrick's fists, the crushing weight of helplessness. "I'm sorry." The words came out strangled, automatic. "I didn't mean to wake you. I'll be quiet. I promise. Wren?" His voice was gentle but firm. "Stop. You don't have to apologize. Not for nightmares. Not for anything." She stared at him, her chest heaving, her mind slowly separating past from present. She was in the palace. She was in her own room. The door was locked. She'd checked it 3 times before falling asleep. And yet here he was. "How did you get in?" "I have a key to every room in the palace. I heard you screaming." His jaw tightened. "I should have asked permission before entering. I'm sorry. I couldn't stand outside and listen to you suffer." He was apologizing. The Lycan king was apologizing to her, an Omega, for entering his own palace without permission. "You came because I was screaming?" "I came because you were hurting." He settled back on his heels, still keeping distance between them. "I'll leave if you want. I just wanted to make sure you were all right." She should tell him to go, should maintain the walls she'd spent 3 years building. But the nightmare still echoed in her bones, and the thought of being alone with it made her chest tight. "Stay." The word escaped before she could stop it. "Please. I don't want to be alone." Something shifted in his expression. He rose and moved to the chair beside her bed, settling into it like he planned to stay all night. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. Then, almost immediately, she heard herself speak. "It was Lord Garrick. He used to—" She stopped, her throat closing around the words. "You don't have to tell me." "I know." She pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. "But I think I need to. I think if I keep it locked inside forever, It's going to poison me. Theron said nothing. He simply waited, patient as stone. He hit me, Wren whispered. Not often. He preferred other punishments. The kneeling, the silence, making me stand for hours without moving, without eating, without drinking. But when he did hit me, it was always when I least expected it. A mistake with the wine. A look he didn't like. Sometimes nothing at all. Her voice cracked. He said it kept me humble. He said omegas needed to be reminded of their place. He was wrong. Theron's voice was rough. Every word he spoke to you was a lie. I know that now, or I'm starting to. She stared at her hands, at the faint scars across her knuckles from punishments she'd tried to forget. But sometimes the lies feel more real than the truth. Sometimes I still believe I'm worthless, that I deserve to kneel, that I'm nothing but a body meant to serve. Look at me. She raised her eyes to meet his. You are not worthless. He leaned forward, his golden gaze burning into hers. You are not nothing. You survived 3 years of hell without breaking completely. You kept some piece of yourself alive even when they tried to destroy everything that made you human. That's not weakness, Wren. That's the kind of strength most people will never understand. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She'd cried more in the past 5 days than she had in the past 3 years. I don't feel strong, she whispered. I know. He reached out slowly, always giving her time, and brushed a tear from her cheek. But you will. When you've healed enough to see yourself clearly, you'll understand exactly how remarkable you are. His touch was impossibly gentle. His thumb lingered on her cheekbone, warm and steady, and Wren felt something stir in her chest. Something that had been dormant for so long she'd forgotten it existed. Her wolf. She's awake, Wren breathed. My wolf. I can feel her. Theron's eyes flared brighter. What does she feel? She's reaching toward you. The admission came out trembling. I've never felt her like this before. I thought she was too weak to... She was never weak. His voice dropped lower. She was protecting herself, protecting you, hiding until it was safe to emerge. His hand moved from her cheek to cup her jaw, tilting her face up to his. She feels the bond. She knows what you are to me. What am I to you? Everything. The word came out rough, almost broken. You're everything, Wren. My wolf has been searching for you for 3 centuries. Every battle I've fought, every kingdom I've built, every empty year I've endured. It was all leading to that moment in Garrick's hall when I caught your scent and finally understood what I was missing. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. He was so close now, close enough that she could see the silver flecks in his golden eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from his body. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to trust someone, how to let someone close. Everyone who's ever had power over me has used it to hurt me. Then let me be the first one who doesn't. His forehead dropped to rest against hers. Let me prove that power doesn't have to mean pain. Let me show you what you deserve. What do I deserve? Kindness. Safety. Someone who would burn the world down before letting anyone hurt you again. His breath ghosted across her lips. You deserve everything, Wren, and I want to give it to you. She should pull away, should protect herself, maintain distance, remember that hope only led to disappointment. Instead, she leaned closer. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. His hand moved to the back of her neck, cradling her gently. I'm scared too. I've waited 300 years for you. And now that you're here, I'm terrified of doing something wrong, of moving too fast, pushing too hard, driving you away. You haven't. She reached up, her fingers trembling as they touched his jaw. You've been, you've been so patient, so kind. I didn't know people could be kind like this. They can. He turned his head, pressing a kiss to her palm. Soft, reverent, achingly tender. They should be, and you should expect nothing less. They stayed like that for a long moment, foreheads pressed together, breath mingling, something fragile and precious building between them. Wren's wolf was singing inside her, straining toward him, and every nerve in her body wanted to close the distance. But he didn't kiss her. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, and in his gaze, she saw restraint, control, the kind of patience that came from someone who understood that healing couldn't be rushed. Sleep, he said. I'll stay until morning, and if the nightmares come back, I'll be right here. She should argue, should insist she was fine, that she didn't need him to watch over her like a child. Instead, she lay back against the pillows and reached for his hand. He took it without hesitation. Thank you, she whispered. Always. His thumb traced circles on her palm. For as long as you'll let me. She was asleep within minutes, his warmth anchoring her, his presence keeping the darkness at bay. And when she woke at dawn to find him still there, still holding her hand, still watching her with those golden eyes full of tenderness, she realized the truth she'd been fighting. She was falling for him, the Lycan king, the man who had lifted her from her knees and promised she would never kneel again, the man who stayed. She was falling, and she had no idea how to stop. She wasn't sure she wanted to. Lord Garrick came for her 2 weeks later. Wren was in the palace gardens, her hands buried in the soil, when she heard the commotion. Raised voices at the main entrance, the clash of boots on stone, and then a voice that turned her blood to ice. I demand to see the king. That Omega is my property, and I have every right to reclaim her. Her hands began to shake. Dirt scattered across her skirts as she scrambled to her feet, her heart slamming against her ribs. No, he couldn't be here. He couldn't have come all this way just for her. She was nothing to him. Furniture, a tool, easily replaced. But even as she thought it, she knew it wasn't about her. It was about pride, about a king making him look foolish in front of his own household. Men like Garrick didn't forgive that kind of humiliation. Wren. She spun. Theron stood at the garden entrance, his face carved from stone. Behind him, guards were already moving toward the main hall. He's here, she whispered. I know. He crossed to her side in 3 quick strides. You don't have to see him. You don't have to do anything. I'll handle this. But he says I'm his property. You're not. Theron's voice was fierce. You never were. A receipt from a slave trader doesn't make a person property. It makes the buyer a criminal. His golden eyes held hers. But I need you to tell me what you want. Do you want to stay here while I deal with him? Or do you want to face him? Face him. The thought made her stomach turn. For 3 years, Lord Garrick had been the monster in every shadow, the voice in every nightmare. The idea of standing before him, of looking into those cold eyes again. But she was tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of being the silent, invisible creature he'd trained her to be. I want to face him, she said. I need to. Something like pride flickered in Theron's expression. He took her hand, giving her an anchor, a lifeline, and led her into the palace. The great hall was already tense when they arrived. Lord Garrick stood at its centre, flanked by 6 armed men and a magistrate clutching a sheaf of documents. When he saw Wren enter with the king, his face twisted into something ugly. "There she is." He pointed at her like she was a runaway dog. "My property, walking around freely as if she has any right to—" "She has every right." Theron's voice cut through the hall like a blade. "She is a free woman, under my protection." "Protection?" Garrick laughed. "Is that what you're calling it?" "I've heard the rumours, Majesty. Keeping an Omega in your private chambers, visiting her at all hours. We all know what kind of protection that is." Wren flinched. The insinuation was clear, and it was designed to shame her, to make her feel dirty, used, worthless all over again. But Theron didn't let go of her hand. "Choose your next words carefully," he said softly, "because they may be your last. I'm simply stating facts." Garrick's smile was venomous. "The girl was legally purchased. I have the documentation right here." He gestured to the magistrate, who stepped forward with trembling hands. "According to the laws of commerce, she belongs to me until such time as I choose to sell or release her. The 500 gold you paid was refused. I returned it to your treasury this morning. The transaction is void." Wren's heart dropped. The gold returned. The transaction void. Which meant, legally— "So you see," Garrick continued, "I'm well within my rights to reclaim my property, unless you'd like to start a war over a worthless Omega." The silence that followed was suffocating. Wren could feel the weight of it pressing down on her, could see the calculation in Garrick's eyes. He knew he'd found a loophole. He knew the king couldn't defy his own laws without consequences. "Wren." She looked up at Theron. "I won't force you to stay," he said quietly. "If you want to go with him, I'll let you. It will destroy me, but I won't make you a prisoner in the name of protecting you." "And if I want to stay?" "Then I'll find a way. I don't care about the laws. I don't care about the consequences. If you choose to stay, I will tear apart every document, every statute, every legal precedent that says you belong to anyone but yourself." "You'd do that?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "You'd defy your own laws for me?" "I'd defy the gods themselves." His golden eyes burned. "You're my mate, Wren. There is nothing I wouldn't do to keep you safe." Garrick made a sound of disgust. "This is ridiculous. She's an Omega, a servant. She doesn't even speak." "I speak." The words came out of Wren's mouth before she realized she was going to say them. Her voice was rusty, hoarse from years of disuse, but it carried through the silent hall. Garrick's eyes widened. "What did you say?" "I said I speak." She stepped forward, and Theron let her go, let her face this monster on her own, trusting her to be strong enough. "You thought you broke me. You thought 3 years of silence meant you'd destroyed everything I was. But you were wrong. You dare." "I dare." She took another step, and this time Garrick was the one who moved back. "I spent 3 years on my knees because you told me that was where I belonged. I stopped speaking because you punished me every time I made a sound. I made myself invisible because you convinced me that's all I was worth." Her voice was shaking, but it was growing stronger with every word. "But I'm not invisible anymore. I'm not silent. And I am not your property." She raised her chin, meeting his eyes directly for the first time in 3 years. "I belong to no one. But if I did, if I chose to give myself to someone, it would never be you." She turned to Theron, and what she saw in his face Pride, love, fierce, desperate hope gave her the courage to say the words she'd been too afraid to speak. I choose to stay. Her voice rang through the hall. I choose him. I choose this. I choose my own life. For the first time ever. Theron moved. He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides, his hands cupping her face, his golden eyes blazing with emotion. Say it again, he breathed. I choose you. He kissed her. It was everything she hadn't known she'd been waiting for. His lips were warm and demanding and impossibly gentle all at once. His hands cradled her face like she was precious, breakable, worth protecting. And somewhere deep inside her, her wolf howled in triumph. When they broke apart, the hall had gone utterly silent. Theron turned to face Garrick, keeping Wren pressed against his side. She has made her choice, he said. And as of this moment, she is officially under the Crown's protection as my recognized mate. Any claim you have to her is null and void. Garrick's face had gone purple with rage. You can't! The law? I am the law. Theron's voice was cold as winter steel. And I say that any man who purchases another person's freedom forfeits his own. Guards, arrest Lord Garrick for the crime of slave trading. Seize his assets. Free every Omega in his household. The guards moved instantly. Garrick screamed protests as they dragged him toward the door, but no one listened. Just before they pulled him through, he looked back at Wren with hatred in his eyes. You'll regret this, he spat. You're nothing. You'll always be nothing. She's everything, Theron said quietly, and you'll never touch her again. The doors closed, and they were alone. Wren's legs gave out. Theron caught her before she could fall, pulling her into his arms and holding her tight against his chest. You spoke, he murmured against her hair. You found your voice. I found more than that. She pulled back to look at him, tears streaming down her face. I found myself. Because of you. No. He shook his head, wiping her tears with gentle thumbs. You were always there. I just gave you space to remember. She rose on her toes and kissed him again. Softer this time. Sweeter. Full of promise. Mine, she whispered against his lips, testing the word. His smile was fierce and tender and full of joy. Yours? He agreed. Always. The bonding ceremony took place on the first day of summer, when the gardens were in full bloom. Wren stood before the mirror in the Queen's chambers, barely recognizing the woman who stared back at her. The gown was soft gold silk, embroidered with tiny flowers that caught the light like captured sunshine. Her hair had been woven with blossoms from the garden she'd been tending for weeks, lavender and rosemary and mint, just like her mother's plot back home. She looked like a queen. More importantly, she looked like herself. The woman she'd been before 3 years of silence. The woman she was becoming now. A knock at the door made her turn. Come in. Nella, the young maid who had become something like a sister to her over the past months, entered with tears already glistening in her eyes. Oh, my lady, you're radiant. I don't feel radiant. But she was smiling as she said it, a real smile, the kind she'd forgotten she was capable of. I feel terrified. Every bride feels that way. Nella crossed to her and took her hands. But His Majesty has been pacing the throne room since dawn. I've never seen him so nervous. You'd think he was facing battle, not a bonding. Something warm unfurled in Wren's chest. He's nervous. Terrified you'll change your mind, I'd wager. Nella's eyes softened. That man has waited centuries for you, and now that he has you, he can scarcely believe his fortune. Wren blinked back tears. She'd cried enough over the past months. Tears of healing, of joy, of slowly learning what it meant to have a voice. Today, she wanted to save her tears for happiness. I'm ready, she said. The throne room had been transformed into a garden. Flowers cascaded from every surface, their perfume filling the air with sweetness. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, casting golden light across the assembled crowd. Nobles, commoners, and, standing in a place of honor near the front, 24 Omegas who had been freed from Lord Garrick's household and given positions in the palace. They were here to watch one of their own become queen. But Wren barely noticed any of it. She only saw Theron. He stood at the end of the aisle, dressed in black and gold, looking every inch the legendary Lycan king. But when his golden eyes found her, when he saw her walking toward him with her head held high, his composure shattered. She watched the mighty king of the realm press his hand to his chest like his heart hurt, watched him blink rapidly against tears he was too proud to shed, watched him struggle to contain emotions that 300 years of rule had taught him to hide. When she reached him, he took her hands, and his voice came out rough. "You're standing," he said. She laughed, a real laugh, bright and clear and full of joy. "You told me I never had to kneel again." "I did." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "And you believed me." "I believe everything you tell me now." She squeezed his hands. "You've earned that." The ceremony was ancient and beautiful. Vows spoken in the old tongue, promises exchanged under a canopy of flowers and golden light. When the officiant asked if she would accept Theron as her mate, her partner, her equal, Wren's voice rang clear and strong through the silent hall. "I will." And when Theron spoke his vows, his voice carried to every corner of the vast room. "I have lived for 300 years," he said, "and for most of them, I was silent. Not because I couldn't speak, but because I had nothing worth saying. I ruled kingdoms, won wars, built an empire. But I was empty. A king without a heart, going through the motions of living without ever truly feeling alive." His grip on her hands tightened. "And then I found you, kneeling on a cold stone floor, pouring wine for a monster who didn't deserve to breathe the same air as you. Silent, broken, waiting for someone to see that you were worth saving." His golden eyes burned into hers. "You taught me that strength isn't about power. It's about surviving the silence and still finding your voice. You taught me that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering who you were and choosing to become her again. And you taught me that love, real love, is patient enough to wait and brave enough to speak." Tears spilled down Wren's cheeks. She didn't try to stop them. "I love you, Wren. I will love you until the last flower fades and the sun burns out. And I will spend every day of my very long life making sure you never kneel again." The officiant pronounced them bonded, and Theron kissed her, slow and deep and full of promise. The hall erupted in cheers, but Wren barely heard them. All she knew was his lips on hers, his arms around her, his heart beating against her own. She was his queen now. She was home. 1 year later. Wren stood in the palace gardens, her hands buried in the soil, exactly as she'd been the day Garrick came to reclaim her. But everything else had changed. Lord Garrick was rotting in the kingdom's harshest prison, convicted of slave trading and crimes against Omegas. The investigation into his household had uncovered horrors that made even hardened soldiers weep. Every Omega he'd ever owned had been freed, compensated, and offered positions throughout the realm. But that was only the beginning. In the year since her bonding, Ren had worked with Theron to dismantle the entire system that had allowed her suffering. Omega trafficking was now punishable by death. The old laws that classified Omegas as property had been abolished. And throughout the kingdom, sanctuaries had been established where freed Omegas could heal, learn, and rebuild their lives. They were called voice houses, and above each door hung a simple motto that Ren had written herself. You are not silent. You were never silent. Your voice was stolen, but it was always yours. Arms wrapped around her from behind, and she leaned back into Theron's chest with a contented sigh. You're gardening again, he murmured against her hair. It helps me think. She turned in his arms, resting her dirt-stained hands on his chest. He didn't flinch at the soil on his fine shirt. He never did. I was remembering the day we met. The day I found you on your knees, pouring wine for a man who didn't deserve to look at you. His jaw tightened at the memory. I try not to think about what would have happened if I hadn't been there. But you were there. She rose on her toes and pressed a kiss to his jaw. You lifted me up. You gave me my voice back. You always had your voice. He pulled her closer. I just gave you a reason to use it. She smiled, that bright, full smile that still made his breath catch even after a year. Do you know what I did this morning, before you woke? Tell me. I sang. Her eyes sparkled. In the bath, like I used to when I was a girl. I hadn't done that in years, and it felt like coming home. Something cracked in Theron's expression. He pulled her against him, burying his face in her hair, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I love you, he said roughly. Have I told you that today? Twice. She grinned against his shoulder. But I never tire of hearing it. I love you. He kissed her temple. I love you. Her cheek. I love you. The corner of her mouth. She captured his lips before he could say it again, kissing him with all the joy and gratitude and love she'd learned to feel over the past year. When they parted, the sun was high and warm, and somewhere in the garden, a bird was singing. No regrets? He asked, the question he'd asked her 100 times before. Ren thought about the girl who had knelt on cold stone, silent and invisible, believing she was worth nothing. She thought about the woman who had stood in a great hall and reclaimed her voice. She thought about everything she had survived and everything she had gained. Not a single one, she said. And as Theron pulled her closer, as the flowers bloomed around them and her voice echoed through the garden in a soft, joyful hum, Ren finally understood what it meant to stand. She had been silent once, kneeling, invisible. Now she was loved. She was heard. She was exactly where she was meant to be, and she would never kneel again. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Until next time.